I never thought a family dinner could make my heart go cold right in the middle of Charlotte's warm spring. My dad had just set his fork down, eyes fixed on his wine glass, when he spoke to my sister in that rare, formal tone of his. You don't need to worry about a thing, Penny. We've set aside enough to cover all your tuition. I clenched my hands under the table, nails digging so deep into my palms they burned. No one looked at me. No one mentioned me. That was the night I fully understood I wasn't part of their long-term plans. If you've ever had to choose between your dignity and your family, leave a comment, hit like, share this story, and follow the channel so you won't miss what's coming next. I'm Arabella, 24 years old, event coordination assistant at a small conference center in downtown Charlotte. I'm the eldest, the first daughter of Paul and Denise Miller. And clearly, I'm the one the family chose to let fend for herself. We weren't poor, not rich either, but stable. Stable enough for porch dinners, for new cars every 8 years, for tax season not to bring panic. Dad worked as a loan officer at a local bank. Mom was a legal secretary at a small law firm. They worked hard, lived simply, but I never once saw them stress about money, the way they said I should. Penny, my sister, was 2 years younger than me. Pretty, soft-spoken, good at social studies, always charming the adults. Since we were little, everything seemed paved for her. In middle school, I asked to take a night art class. Mom said we couldn't afford it, then took Penny shoe shopping for new ballet slippers the next afternoon. I still remember how she said it. You know, sweetheart, Penny has talent. And you, well, you're more independent. They always used that word with me, independent, as if it were praise. It was really a polite way of saying, you can take care of yourself, so we won't have to try. That dinner didn't completely shock me, but I wasn't ready for how cleanly, casually they said it. Dad poured Mom another glass of wine and spoke like the decision had been made months ago. Your mother and I have already decided. Davidson's tuition is a bit steep, but Penny deserves it. We want her to focus fully on her studies, not waste time working odd jobs. I looked up, lips dry, and asked softly, what about me? Every parent-teacher conference, I was the top of my class. Mom looked at me. There was a flicker of guilt, then gone. Bella, you're capable. You always figure things out. You can apply for scholarships, work part-time. You've done event planning before. I scoffed. Didn't bother hiding it. You mean because I've had to scrape by, I should just keep scraping? Dad set his glass down, looked at me square. Don't be dramatic. Penny has clear direction. International relations isn't easy. Your major, sometimes it leans a bit emotional. Emotional. I'd coordinated 2 regional trade shows, written over 30 event proposals, and received 3 full-time offers from investors. Yet they called my field emotional. I left the table before anyone could add more. Penny kept her eyes down. Didn't speak up, didn't contradict them, just silence, like always. I drove back to my cramped rental apartment, heart racing like the turn signal blinking in my rear view. The second-floor unit faced the parking lot, tight, old, noisy. I sat on the balcony for hours, with only a glass of cold water and the sound of arguing neighbors below. I was used to no one showing up to my showcases, no one asking what I needed for my next project. But I wasn't used to being publicly written out of the plan. So cleanly. So deliberately. That night, I thought of my grandmother, Eleanor, the only person who ever called me a girl who turns scraps into something worthwhile. She once told me, don't wait for someone to teach you how to love yourself, Bella. Write your own manual, then keep it close. I didn't quite understand it back then, but under that faded porch light, I started my first page. Don't wait to be chosen, choose your own path. And I had no idea that was only the beginning. The next morning, I got up earlier than usual. Not out of motivation, my brain just wouldn't stop. I made coffee, the cheapest brand from the gas station store, and sat in front of my laptop staring at the Asheville State College enrollment page. The words blurred, but my fingers typed anyway. I wasn't waiting for permission anymore. No one offered to pay my tuition, but it still had to be paid. I picked organizational communication, a choice Dad once called a major with no clear ROI. But I had seen plenty of return. Return in client meetings, timelines, budget sheets I had been filling out for 3 years straight. I didn't give grand speeches like Penny, but I understood the rhythm of a room, the way everything had to flow like gears. I liked being backstage and watching it all go smoothly, on cue, with the perfect soundtrack. I didn't shine in a spotlight, but I knew how to build moments people never forgot. I submitted my application, filled out FAFSA, and scoured scholarship forums. I found one partial scholarship for communications students with practical experience. I applied. A week later, an email came through. I didn't cheer. I just stared at the word congratulations like it belonged to someone else. 3 days later, I asked to transfer jobs. My old job, coordinator at a boutique hotel in downtown Charlotte, paid hourly but offered no flexibility. I needed something that would shift around class schedules. I called Maggie, my old manager, at a small conference center in Asheville, where I'd worked part-time during the summer before senior year. She recognized my voice instantly. Bella, oh my goodness, the kid who rearranged chairs like we were prepping for battle. I still remember how you handled that blackout during the book fair. Did you apply yet? Never mind, just come talk. 1 week later, I officially rejoined as a part-time event coordinator assistant. The pay wasn't much higher, but the hours were flexible, and more importantly, I got to do what I loved. My parents didn't ask. Mom sent one single text when she found out I was moving to Asheville. Take care of your health. It gets pretty deserted around there at night. I didn't reply, not out of anger, but because I didn't know what to say. Benny stayed silent too. I didn't blame her. At least not then. She always chose to stay on the sidelines when things in the family got too heavy. Like, if she wasn't present, she couldn't be involved. My new apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old building, right behind a small grocery store. I shared the place with 2 other students. Callie, a med major who brought home plastic skeleton models for the kitchen table, and Nate, a music student who practiced guitar at 11 p.m. None of us had much money, but we shared everything. Cooking oil, toilet paper, professor rants, and those wordless cleaning sprees when we were all too tired to speak. I started living like I was following a blueprint only I could see. Daytime classes, work shifts from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m., Saturdays were for event support, morning setup, afternoon supplier coordination, evening takedown. I taped a large calendar to the wall and crossed off each shift, each assignment deadline. Every box was a small promise I forced myself to keep. There wasn't any other choice. Meals were mostly instant noodles, sometimes with a boiled egg or a handful of stir-fried greens. But every night I made time for tea, a habit Grandma Eleanor had taught me. Tea reminds you that you still have a rhythm to your life, even if it's a slow one. I sipped and remembered that line whenever my head felt like a stretched wire. In early July, I got a video call from Grandma Eleanor. She'd been in assisted living since a fall 2 years ago. Her eyes were weak, voice shaky, but every time we spoke, she still had that same bright look, as if she were back on the old porch, holding a cup of tea. "Is it rainy in Asheville this summer, sweetheart?" she asked. "It rains, but less than in Charlotte." "I like it that way. The air's calmer." She nodded, her gaze drifting like she could see where I was. "You're doing what none of them dared to imagine. That gives me peace." I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her, my throat dry. I started journaling again, not to tell stories, but to track expenses. Every power bill, tutoring session, every time I had to choose between a textbook or a full tank of gas. There was nothing glamorous about this journey, but nothing to be ashamed of either. Because every step I took, however small, was mine. No guide, no guarantees, no one's approval required. That felt like reason enough to keep going. And I didn't know that the real turning point would come from a total stranger. I picked up morning shifts at the conference center, which meant waking before 6 a.m. to catch the first bus heading south across Asheville. That early, the bus was nearly empty, just a few sleepy drivers and grocery workers in aprons. I carried leftovers, wrapped in a towel to keep warm, since our apartment fridge was shorting out again. That morning, we were hosting a small tech conference for local startups. My job was to check audio before the speakers arrived, coordinate with logistics to set up tables and prep coffee for guests. While taping up signs outside the main hall, my hands still red from holding a hot water jug, a woman about my mom's age walked up. White button down, tucked in, hair neatly tied. "Hi there, are you Arabella?" She extended her hand. "I'm Cynthia Blake, Program Manager at Innovation Works. Nice to meet you. Maggie had nothing but praise for you." I shook her hand, trying to mask my surprise. Cynthia was one of the leads of a student business networking series I had read about, but never expected to meet so soon. "You handled all of this?" She looked around at the banners and cordon sections. "Part of it. I help coordinate, but logistics is handled by a separate crew," I answered, steady. Lighting and layout look great. Seems like you don't just get it done." She smiled and moved on, leaving me with a sign in hand and something unfamiliar swelling in my chest. Not pride, maybe just being seen. That evening, I brought home 2 leftover sandwiches and a discount voucher for a local coffee chain. Callie saw me holding the food bag and lit up like a kid seeing presents. "Dinner saved again," she laughed, pushing aside her medical notes to clear the table. That night, while Nate tested out a new song in his room, I sat at the kitchen counter reviewing my schedule for the week. There was a group presentation in communication research, while a new event at the center landed right on my midterm. I calculated hours, study time, work time, sleep time. If everything lined up, I could manage. By 11 p.m., I finally finished the group assignment. As I stood, my back felt like a fully stretched zipper. My shirt was soaked with cold sweat. I made a cup of tea, sat on the balcony. The city at night felt oddly still. Headlights passed on the freeway, nighttime sounds echoed like rhythm against the wall. I texted Grandma Eleanor. "Met someone from Innovation Works today. Nothing big, but I'm glad they knew my name." She replied with one line, "Good. Don't let passing glances make you think you're nobody." I put the phone down and cupped my mug with both hands. The warmth eased my fingers. Old apartment, leaky bathroom, Nate still playing that riff, but I felt calm. The next morning, Cynthia emailed. She thanked me for helping out, then asked if I'd be interested in joining their fall internship program. Flexible hours, school credit, and a modest stipend. I read it 3 times, typed my reply with shaky fingers. And when I hit send, I realized I was smiling. Not from joy, but like I'd finally loosened a button on a too tight collar. While I was still quietly celebrating, Mom sent a message. Just one line. "Penny just got a letter from Brown University. Congrats to her." I read it, didn't reply, didn't ask. I didn't delete it either. I left it there. A reminder of something I used to think I needed, but no longer did. That afternoon, I worked the final cleanup shift after the conference. As I gathered up the standee signs, a middle-aged man, probably one of the speakers, paused, watching me fold a board. "You're a communications student?" "Yes, sir," I answered, still working. "Be careful, this field has a lot of talkers and not many doers." He nodded and walked off. I just watched him go. I didn't respond. Because I didn't need to explain. I just needed to keep going. And sometimes, not reacting is the clearest silence of all. As I finished cleaning up, it started to rain. I didn't bring an umbrella. My shirt clung to my back as I climbed onto the bus. The plastic seat was ice cold. A little girl in front of me tapped her feet to the beat of her music. I sat behind her, hair dripping onto my shoulders, still holding my planner tightly. On the first page, I'd written in black ink weeks ago, "I'm not following their path. I'm drawing my own." And I had no idea that map was about to cross with someone completely unexpected at the moment I needed it most. The internship at Innovation Works began on a cloudless August morning, the air dry like summer, trying to cling to its last breath before fall. I wore a light gray blouse I'd ironed the night before, flats, and a canvas bag holding my notebook and lunchbox. No one saw me off, no first day at work photo, just me, standing in front of a brown brick office building, taking a deep breath, then pushing open the door. The Asheville branch of Innovation Works wasn't big. 3 meeting rooms, a shared workspace, and a small kitchen with a constantly noisy coffee machine. Cynthia showed me around and gave a quick rundown of each department. You'll be working directly with me and Deshawn, our content manager, she said. Don't be afraid to ask, but also don't wait for anyone to hold your hand. I nodded, memorizing the layout as we walked. My spot was a small desk by the window, just enough space for a laptop, a desk lamp, and a framed quote in all caps, "Build with what you have." I smiled, not because it was clever, but because it felt familiar. At lunch, I sat beside a girl named Mina, one of the designers. She had her curly hair tied high and mint-colored headphones around her neck. When I opened my lunchbox, she tilted her head and asked, "Wow, you cook yourself?" "Kind of. It's just mixed rice with leftover veggies from the fridge." "Still better than my sad sandwich," Mina laughed. "I'm making sushi rolls tomorrow. Want to trade?" I looked up. "Sure, but fair warning, I'm a terrible cook." She laughed out loud. "So am I." We ate with soft office music playing in the background. Not much small talk, but a quiet kind of comfort, the rare kind in unfamiliar places. In the second week, I was assigned to manage the guest list for a panel on content strategy for small businesses. There were over 80 names, most of them local entrepreneurs. I had to send invites, track responses, prep name tags, and categorize attendees by industry. When I showed Cynthia the preliminary list, she skimmed it and pointed at one name, Harvey Sanders, Artisan Cafe. "He's picky," she said. "Don't send the generic email. Write a custom one. Highlight why we want him specifically." I nodded and rewrote the message from scratch. Short, clear, no flattery, just one line that said, "We think Artisan Cafe is a great example of consistent brand positioning." Half a day later, he replied, "Okay, I'll come." Cynthia simply said, "Good," but the way she nodded made me feel lighter. One late afternoon, I was alone in the print room, sorting through stacks of handouts. As I bent to pick up some that had fallen, Deshawn walked in. He stopped and casually asked, "Ever wonder why you're doing all this?" I looked up, papers still in hand. "You mean like long-term goals?" "Not exactly, just the real reason. What keeps you from quitting?" I paused. In my mind flashed the image of Mom holding Penny's acceptance letter, never once asking how I was doing in Asheville. "I think I'm trying to prove something, not sure to who, but I know if I stop now I'll regret it." He nodded. "Fair enough. Don't forget that reason whether you make it big or not." I stacked the papers, feeling his words settle somewhere deep in my chest. At the end of the month, after the panel, while speakers were shaking hands and heading out, Cynthia waved me over. "You did well," she said. "Some guests gave positive feedback on the setup, both the emails and the layout. Next week, would you like to help plan next month's program?" I nodded instantly, no questions asked. All I could think about was, I wanted to keep going. That night, back home, I opened the fridge and found a can of soda from Nate with a sticky note. "For Arabella, our house's logistics brain." I smiled, put it in the fridge, and didn't drink it right away. I liked the feeling of saving something small just for myself. Lying in bed, streetlight streaks cast across my window, the ceiling fan spun softly. I thought of Mina, Deshawn, Cynthia, all the people who didn't even know they were helping rebuild a part of me in quiet, powerful ways. I'd gotten used to working in silence, unnoticed. But now, I was among people who looked at me and saw enough to ask me to stay. And that scared me more than I expected, because I knew from now on I couldn't blame anyone else for my choices. What I didn't know yet was that my next challenge would come from the one place I thought was finally safe. In early September, the conference center announced it would be pausing some events due to restructuring. Maggie called me into the admin office, straight to the point. Bella, the new manager from Raleigh, is here. They're cutting part-time hours to prioritize senior staff. I tried to keep you on for a few days a week, but even that's uncertain now. I nodded without saying anything. On the desk, the small wooden clock ticked louder than usual. For now, that's how it is. I'll write you a letter of recommendation if you need one, she added, her voice slowing down. I left the office at 3 p.m., my work folder tucked under my arm, head empty. The early fall wind was drier, the sky beginning to turn gray like mountain weather often does. I caught the bus home, sitting next to a boy in a baseball jersey, his legs swinging above the floor. I figured I should be scared. But the strongest feeling I had was silence. Not panic, not anger, just muted. That evening, I spread papers across the table and recalculated my entire budget. Tuition, rent, utilities, food, transportation, even pens and printing paper. I cut anything I could. Canceled my premium data plan, asked to pick up extra hours at Innovation Works, withdrew some savings. Mina saw me sitting in the middle of the mess and asked, "You okay?" "Probably not, but I'm not crashing either." She nodded, didn't ask more. A little while later, she brought me a mug of cocoa, set it down beside me, and walked into her room without a word. I took slow sips, bitter with just a little sweetness, warm enough to keep me from freezing. The next day, I emailed Cynthia explaining the situation. An hour later, she called me directly. "All right, Arabella, you can take on more weekday hours, but the associate content director is going on a 3-week leave. Want to step in?" I sat up straight. "You mean cover for him temporarily?" "Yes, you'd help with both content prep and team coordination. It won't be easy, but if you're up for it, I'll do it." I didn't hesitate, even though my heart started pounding the moment I hung up. The workload doubled. I had to plan content schedules for 3 of the organization's media platforms, coordinate freelancers, and prepare weekly reports. No one demanded perfection, but I knew I couldn't afford too many mistakes. Some nights, I didn't get home until after 10 p.m., collapsing by the kitchen table while Callie read medical textbooks on the sofa. She'd bring me a reheated bowl of chicken soup, and she didn't need me to say a word to know I was drained. "You give everything you've got to everything you do," she muttered. "Just hope you don't burn out when no one's around to recharge you." I smiled, too tired to respond. On the weekend, I cleaned the room, folded laundry, changed the sheets, just to feel like I had control over something again. While vacuuming, my phone rang. The screen said, "Mom?" I hesitated for a beat, then answered. "Hi, honey," Mom said, voice even. "Penny told me you're working for some organization in Asheville. Doing content work?" "Yes," I replied, wiping sweat from my neck. "Your dad thinks you should consider moving back to Charlotte after school. More opportunities there. Asheville's just a secondary market." I was silent for a few seconds, then said, "I think what I'm doing is real work, not an experiment." She sighed into the phone. "Yeah, I'm just worried about you. Heard you got your hours cut at the conference center?" I didn't ask who told her. I didn't confirm. I just said, "I'm getting by, no need to worry." She didn't say much else. Before hanging up, she said, "If anything happens, just call home. I'll always be your mom." I ended the call without feeling lighter. That sentence sounded vague, like a kitchen light that's too dim. Sunday afternoon, I walked to the park near my house. I brought my notebook and sat on an old wooden bench under a maple tree. The wind blew hard, scattering the pages. I held them down with both hands and wrote. I'm not good at asking for help, but I'm learning how to ask the right people at the right time. When I finished, I closed the notebook and watched the first red leaves fall to my feet. I knew the season was shifting, and inside me something was changing too. Not loudly, not in a way anyone would notice. I didn't expect that change would bring Penny closer to me in a way no one in our family could have imagined. I wasn't used to seeing her name on my phone screen. Her text came while I was editing slides for the weekly report. Hey, I need to talk. Urgent. I called back immediately. She answered after 2 rings, her voice not as steady as usual. What's wrong? Are you free tonight? I want to meet in person. I checked my schedule, then nodded like she could see me. Ather 6, the coffee shop by the bus station, okay? I'll be there. Penny showed up on time, her hair in a bun, wearing a cream sweater and no makeup. Rare for her. She sat down, hands clasped. I don't know how to say this quickly, but I'm in trouble at school, she said, eyes on her glass. My senior project got flagged for plagiarism. I set my coffee down. Did you plagiarize? No, but I used an old paper without properly citing it. The professor says they might launch an official investigation. I looked at her. No rush to comfort, no instant doubt. What did you say to them? I said it wasn't intentional, but I'm not sure they believe me. I've never been accused of anything like this. She looked up, her voice smaller. I feel lost. I paused, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I realized this was the first time Penny had come to me when she really needed help. Bring the materials to my place, I said, tonight. She nodded. Her face relaxed a little, like someone had just opened an exit door for her. That night, we sat side by side at my kitchen table, with highlighters and a laptop. I showed her how to format her sources properly, combed through every flagged section, added citations, and a reference list. Penny wasn't used to working like this. She was used to having someone check her work, used to hearing, just do it, we'll take care of it if anything happens. How long have you been doing this? Penny asked as I adjusted a footnote. Almost 4 years, I replied without stopping. No one around to fix things, so I had to figure it out myself. She didn't say anything else. I glanced over and saw her watching me, quietly but intently. Not like a younger sister used to getting special treatment, but like someone relearning how to respect someone from scratch. Around 2 a.m., we finished the edits. Penny leaned against the wall and let out a long breath. Do you think I still have a chance? You do, I said, as long as you're done avoiding it. She nodded. Her eyes were red but dry. If you've ever stayed silent because no one believed you, or got blamed just for speaking the truth, leave a comment. Share this story if you think someone needs to hear it. The next morning, Penny sent her revised statement. 3 days later, she texted, "They accepted the revision. I can resubmit." I read it. I didn't smile, but something lifted inside me. That weekend, she added, "I didn't tell Mom and Dad. They just think I was tired from deadlines." I wasn't surprised. Anything that didn't go smoothly was usually labeled just a little thing in our house, then brushed aside. Penny's exhaustion, without physical proof, probably just counted as occasional stress. Sunday night, as I was sorting through work emails, Penny sent a photo, a white wall in her room with a handwritten quote taped to it. "No one is born strong, but anyone can learn." I knew that line. I said it 2 years ago when she was cut from the debate team and came home silent for 3 straight days. I said it while boiling eggs. She didn't reply, just sat next to me, peeling shrimp. Turns out she remembered. The next week, Penny invited me to a student fair where she was volunteering. I showed up late, in the middle of a crowd of freshmen handing out flyers and free cookies. I spotted her talking to a young student holding some documents, looking lost. When she saw me, she pointed my way. "This is my sister Arabella," she said. "She works in event planning and communications. If you want to know how teamwork looks when no one gets left behind, ask her." I stood there, still holding my water bottle. The student turned to me, shook my hand, and smiled lightly. "I'm looking for someone to help shape the content strategy for our student union campaign." I didn't say yes, but I looked at Penny. She looked at me without comparison, without hesitation, just the eyes of someone who had finally seen and accepted that she wasn't the center of everything and didn't need to be loved. I left the fair at dusk. The sky had turned amber, and the fall wind dragged cold gusts behind it. I zipped up my coat and walked across the leaf-covered campus lawn. I no longer had questions about who was right or wrong. Only one thought remained. Maybe family doesn't have to be the place that's always right. Maybe, if we're lucky, it's the place where we can learn to see each other differently. I wasn't prepared for who wanted to see me next. My father. I saw him standing at the edge of the school's parking lot after my Friday afternoon workshop. The old silver pickup was still the same as when I was in high school, only now the penny debate team sticker was gone. He wore a buttoned-up shirt and slightly wrinkled khakis, holding a brown paper bag. His eyes glanced over me, like testing the waters. Not awkward, but not warm enough to feel familiar. "Just passing by? Or did someone tell you to come?" I asked, stopping 2 steps away. Penny said, "You've been pretty busy, but I thought it'd be better to talk in person." He held out the bag. "Your mom made pumpkin bread. Told me to bring some up." I didn't take it right away, just looked at the bag. A hint of cinnamon came from the open fold. I couldn't tell if it was sincere or just another old trick to smooth things over. "Thanks," I said, keeping my hands in my coat pockets. He swallowed and nodded lightly. "I heard you're doing well at the new place." "Doing okay." "That Innovation Works place, is it long-term?" "I'm not sure yet, but I'm still learning a lot." He looked down at the concrete where a few red leaves were spinning in the wind. "I'm not good at this kind of conversation," he said quietly. "And your mom tends to talk in circles. But honestly, I just wanted to ask, are you doing okay these days?" I looked at him for a while. When I was little, I thought that was the simplest question in the world. Later, I learned some people take a lifetime just to say it right. "I'm okay," I said. "Thanks to not worrying about things I no longer have to control." He nodded. His fingers tightened around the paper bag handle, then let go. "I heard about what happened at the conference center, about the schedule cuts, I guess. If I had asked you what you needed back then, maybe—" "I didn't need anything," I cut in, not sharply. "I figured it out. And honestly, expecting nothing from you and Mom was the only thing that kept me calm." He looked up at me. A very different look. No defense, no excuses. Just quiet, listening. "I'm not saying this to blame you, but I've lived long enough to understand I wasn't one of your top priorities." He pulled his hands into his jacket pockets. A small movement, but I saw it clearly. "Maybe that's true," he said. "Or maybe I misjudged." I shrugged. "That's your part to figure out. Mine was building what you thought I couldn't hold on to." We stood there for a while, no one said more. The wind picked up, colder now, tinged with late autumn. He placed the paper bag on the bench beside the lot. "If you don't want it, that's okay, but your mom thought it should be left anyway." I nodded slightly. "Drive safe, heading home." He walked slowly back to the truck. Before opening the door, he paused, not turning around. "Penny said you helped her a lot, said she's changed. I think that's not a small thing." "Penny changed herself," I said calmly. "I was just the one she didn't look away from when she had to face herself." I watched until his truck pulled out of the school gate. It was just me, the bag of bread, and a silence that no longer felt heavy. That evening, I brought the bread home. Callie caught the scent and ran into the kitchen. "You baked?" "No, someone else did. I just brought it back." I opened the box and cut a slice. The taste wasn't bad. The edges were a little burnt. Mom must have rushed. I didn't eat more, but I didn't throw it away either. Night fell quickly. I sat down to write an event report, my eyes stuck on the first sentence, unable to type a word. All I could see in my mind was my dad standing in the middle of campus. Not the man who once said, "That major doesn't have a clear path," but someone learning how to say, "Are you doing okay?" without flinching. I knew it didn't undo everything, but it also wasn't meaningless. I didn't quite recognize this feeling yet, had no name for it. All I knew was the next morning I woke up earlier than usual, and I was sure I wanted to do something bigger with everything I'd learned. I couldn't have guessed that the chance to act on that would come from an email with no subject line. I kept reading and rereading, no subject, in the inbox, my finger hovering over the trackpad. The sender's address wasn't familiar. talent@riseproject.org. The first line was short. Hi, Arabella. We received a nomination from Cynthia Blake for our Youth Entrepreneur Support Program in the Appalachia region. I froze. Cynthia hadn't said a word. The next line explained that they were looking for a pilot program lead, someone with hands-on experience in event coordination and content development, and a real understanding of the challenges students and small businesses face in the region. I sat up straighter and read the whole email carefully. At the end, they invited me to submit a content proposal within a week. Not a promise, but if selected, I'd work directly with their advisory team for the next 6 months and receive a budget to launch a personal project. I left my desk and stepped out onto the balcony. The early morning wind was crisp, enough to clear my head. Below, Nate was playing something on the ukulele, soft notes mixing with the hum of traffic below. I thought about those nights buried in misprinted handouts, workshops with only 8 people showing up, and the one presentation where my hands shook because the projector cut out mid-speech. I never once thought I was doing anything big, but clearly someone had noticed, and enough to put my name in a nomination I never knew about. That night, I drafted a proposal. I built it from the very chaos I'd been through, how students without resources could still launch meaningful community campaigns, how people without the right connections could still build sustainable networks. Every line I wrote came from things no one had ever shown me how to do, things I had to figure out for myself. 3 days later, I sent it off. 5 days after that, they replied, "We're very impressed. Let's schedule a call with the advisory team." The call was set for 8 o'clock Monday morning. I was well prepared, but skipped breakfast. When the screen lit up with the faces of 3 people, one in Nashville, one in Atlanta, and one from Rise in Boone, I took a deep breath and tapped the pen lightly on the table. "We're not just looking for someone good at logistics," one said. "We want someone who can turn what they've overcome into a framework others can use." I nodded. I don't have an academic model, just a bunch of things I had to patch together to make it through. But I think sometimes the things they don't teach in school are the ones that matter most. They paused for a few seconds, then smiled. "Sounds like we're on the same page." The call lasted longer than expected. They scheduled me to sign a trial agreement the following week. No big promises, but enough for me to know this was a real turning point. That night, I told Penny over video call. She was in her dorm room, the study lamp casting a warm glow on a face that looked different from all the times she'd called from home. "I think I'm about to do something that might actually help people like us," I said. Penny smiled. "You've always been doing that. The only difference now is people are finally paying attention." I stayed quiet, sipping cold water. "I think Mom knows," she added, "about you getting selected. I saw her scrolling through Rise Project's Facebook a few times." "Did she say anything?" "Not yet, but when she saw the video of your kickoff event last week, she paused. Didn't scroll past like she usually does." I exhaled lightly, not because I expected anything, just because it made breathing feel easier. 3 days later, I got the official email saying I'd been selected for the program's first phase. It included a starter stipend and a nomination for a full-time MBA scholarship at UNC Asheville, if I chose to apply. I didn't decide right away, but I printed the email, folded it into thirds, and tucked it into my wallet. Not to brag, but to remind myself, sometimes the things we never asked for still find us, not because of luck, but because we never stopped showing we were worth it. That night, I walked home past the old neighborhood where I used to work night shifts for a tiny conference center. The yellow lights hung low, and the silence felt like a stage after the crowd had left. I stopped in front of the familiar building and saw a group of students inside testing stage lights for an upcoming seminar. No one knew who I was. No one needed to. I just smiled softly and walked on. And for the first time in many months, I didn't have to brace myself to keep moving forward. What I didn't expect was that the first person to ask to meet me after the news broke would be my mother. The call came while I was waiting for coffee at the corner shop near Innovation Works. Mom's number. I stared at the screen for a beat, then picked up. "Are you free this afternoon?" Her voice was softer than I remembered. "I'm in Asheville. Could we meet just for a bit?" I didn't ask why she was here. Didn't ask who told her. I just said, 4 o'clock, Peck Square. I arrived 10 minutes early. The sky was overcast, and the wind filtered through the chestnut trees nearby. I sat on a wooden bench near the fountain, watching people go by without seeing any faces clearly. Mom arrived on time, wearing her usual cream-colored coat and carrying her old handbag. Her hair was shorter, with a few more strands of gray than last year. She looked around, spotted me, then slowed her pace as if careful not to stir anything up. "Are your hands cold?" she asked after sitting down. "They're fine." She nodded and stayed quiet for a moment. I didn't try to fill the silence. I left it there between us like an old tablecloth no one's had the nerve to fold away. "I saw the video from the seminar," she said. "An old friend sent me the link." I didn't look at her. My eyes followed a small dog tugging its leash, running circles around the fountain. "I didn't think you'd be able to stand there and speak so calmly. Back then, you used to blush if someone even mentioned public speaking." I nodded slightly. "Back then, no one stood backstage to click the slides at the right moment." She gave a faint laugh, then fell quiet again. "The scholarship and the program you're in? I only heard recently. Penny told me Cynthia nominated you." I didn't respond. The wind shifted direction. Dry leaves rolled beneath the bench. "I didn't come to offer some hollow apology," she said. I felt like I had to see you properly, not through texts, not through your sister's stories." I turned to her. "Why? Because now I'm successful?" She exhaled slowly, light but steady. "Maybe, but truthfully, I think I just didn't want to be the last person to know who you are." I sat up straighter. This time I held her gaze longer. "I'm not angry that you didn't believe I could do anything big," I said. "I'm angry that you thought me figuring it out on my own was expected, nothing worth acknowledging." She clenched both hands together, then released them. A gesture I knew well. Something she did when she was about to say something even she found hard to admit. I used to think strength was something best left unspoken, as if acknowledging it would make others feel weaker. I smiled, not bitterly, just realizing she was telling the truth, in that voice she once used only when I had a fever as a kid, lying on the sofa while she rubbed my forehead. "I don't need you to fix anything," I said, "just if someday I need to talk, I hope you can hear it for what it is, not for what you want to turn into advice." She nodded, soft but firm. "I brought some food. You used to love spicy mushroom soup, didn't you?" I smiled. "Still do. Just less spicy now." We left the park as the sky dimmed. Before saying goodbye, she looked at me again. "You know," she said, "Penny always talks about her sister like she's lighting a lamp in a dark tunnel, not to be seen, but so someone else doesn't trip." I laughed, more easily this time. "I think she's got her own lamp now." She nodded, her eyes a little wet, but she didn't blink quickly. "Congratulations, Arabella," she said, "for living true to yourself, even when no one cheered you on." I just nodded. Words like that, when they finally come, deserve to stand alone in the breeze for a while. That night, I sat in my room in front of a draft email to the RISE project team. They'd invited me to mentor a new group of students. I typed the first line, erased it, then typed again. In the end, I just wrote, I don't have advice, but I do have a stack of plans sketched in pencil and corrected with cold coffee. I hit send and leaned back in my chair. I wasn't waiting for a reply, but just a few hours later, a familiar name appeared in my inbox, this time from my old school. I stared at the subject line, regarding this year's commencement. Inside, they invited me to return and speak to the graduating students and their families. I sat still. Spring was just starting to stretch across Boulder, thin like dew on morning glass. Beneath my laptop screen, my hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but because too many memories came rushing in, nudging open a door I hadn't locked. The ceremony would be in May at the outdoor amphitheater near the base of the Flatirons. I once sat in the middle rows, 18 years old, throat tight. Not from emotion, but from emptiness. Back then, my family showed up just long enough for a photo, then left. Penny had a summer ballet show, and Mom had a shift at the hospital. Typed a few words, then erased them. Thank you for the invitation. I need time to think. I hit send. The next day, during the final mentoring session, a young woman named Elena raised her hand. Do you ever feel like you have to go back to places that once hurt you? I chuckled softly. More often than you'd think. So why do you go back? I looked into her eyes, eager but guarded. Because not every place stays the same after you leave, I said, and sometimes going back is how you know it no longer defines you. Elena nodded slowly. I knew that feeling, wanting to walk away, but also to prove something, not to others, but to yourself. That night, I opened the email again and rewrote my response. Thank you for the invitation. I'll be there. Nothing more. The important things rarely need many words. On the day of the ceremony, I wore a navy suit, hair tied back neatly but not too formal. When I stepped onto the stage, the wind rustling through the microphone sounded like a greeting from the city I once left behind. I didn't open with thank yous. I started with something real. I used to think I graduated with nothing but empty hands. But it turns out I carried more than I knew. Belief in independence, in rebuilding from the wreckage, and in people who don't need to share your blood to become your family. I spoke about the moving days, the misspelled contracts, and the small group of people who stood by me when I thought no one would. I didn't mention Mom. I didn't mention Penny. But anyone who had known me before understood. Sometimes silence is the answer. To close, I simply said, not everyone leaves this place with applause, but you don't need anyone to clap for you in order to start running. After the ceremony, a few students came up to thank me. Some just nodded quietly. I got back to the hotel late, turned on my phone, and saw a message from Penny. Heard you made people cry. I'm proud of you. I replied with a photo of the stage from afar, along with, you'll make even more people cry if you submit that scholarship application this year. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, her message came. Fine, but you have to help me with the essay. I leaned back against the pillow and laughed. A part of me had closed, just enough to make space for something new. I don't know where you're listening from. Maybe in your car, before bed, or on a day when you needed a story to remind you to stand back up. Tell me where you're tuning in from. And if you'd like to hear more real journeys like this, don't forget to follow the channel because the next story might be exactly what you need. Arabella's story is a reminder that freedom doesn't always come from cutting ties, but from no longer being bound by what once hurt us. She didn't try to fix the past. She chose to build her present on her true values. In a world full of expectations and roles we're told to play, Arabella proves that anyone can rewrite their life story, not with bitterness, but with resolve and the courage to live as their true self.